Terrarium care guide. Where's my chair? Oh. So the concept of terrarium is always so appealing to me. They're so magical. You know, it's basically nature got captured inside a little jar and completely separate from the world outside. And it's self-sustainable on its own. How amazing is that? So long story short, I was very excited to make my first ever terrarium. So I kind of did my homework. I watched every YouTube videos. I did all the research and read every articles about terrarium that I could find. But all of that research just to see my first ever terrarium slowly dying off after half a year. So there's a lot more elements that got involved into Terrarium that could help it self-sustainable than you might think. So that's what this video about. So before we dive deeper into the videos, I would like to mention unavoidable problems that happen to every single sealed terrarium. It is mold. So mold happen because of the high in humidity levels, and there's little to none airflow inside the ecosystem. A big enough mold outbreak can potentially ruin your whole terrarium setup. So there's one way that you could prevent this from happening. I introduce you Springtail. This little guy on nature's cleanup crew feeding on mold, decaying plants material, and other organic matters. They help keep the ecosystem inside your terrarium balanced, reducing the risk of mold and even helping to break down waste. Plus, they're completely harmless to your plants. Another awesome thing about Springtail is that they are super low maintenance and won't cause any issues in your terrarium. Once you introduce them, they won't die out or overpopulate. They'll actually maintain a stable culture on their own, keeping everything in check. Springtail naturally balance their number based on the resource available, so you won't have to worry about them taking over your little ecosystem. They are very easy and affordable to find online, and the culture will last you a long time. In a future video, I will show you how to start and propagate your own culture at home, so stay tuned. Okay, so let's talk about the three essential elements that I find the most important to help your terrarium thrive through times. They are humidity, temperatures, and light. Now, I did not mention about the substrate because the substrate may vary depends on what type of your terrarium that you have. But there's one thing for sure, always use the right type of soil for your specific terrarium. So when I talk about humidity, I'm referring to the water level inside the terrarium. And here's the most common question that I got a lot of people ask for is how often should I water my terrarium? The answer is you only need to water it whenever it's needed. As terrarium, they need humid to survive, and to able to hold that humid, you have to close the terrarium. So in that sense, every single drop of water that you spray in there, it's just going to be trapped in there. So you don't have to spray every single day. So here are some signs that show your terrarium's either proper moist or underwater or overwatered. So a proper moist terrarium, it will have a full condensation cycle in it, which means condensation is happening and then it's gonna stay like for 2 or 3 days and then it stay clear and then it has condensation again. So that's like a full cycle of condensation. So if your terrarium doesn't have any condensation form on the glass at all, it means it's underwater and it needs to be watered. But keep in mind, underwater is always better than overwatered. So if you underwater it, you can adjust it later. But if you overwater it, it's gonna take a lot of time to make it stable again. And if the condensation stay on the glass for weeks without staying clear, and it can form like a big droplet of water, it means it's overwatered. And here's the sign that show you just overwater it right away after you just water it. Is that the substrate looks soaking wet. It pressed evenly on the glass and it looks like mud. Simply use any material that can absorb water and then use it to wipe it down. And if you see your moss and the substrate look way too wet, you can use long tweezer with a piece of paper. Use it to press gently on the moss and the substrate to absorb the excess water. Keep doing that until you see a full condensation cycle in it. Well, You can keep the lid slightly open to have the water vapor can escape more easily, but keep in mind do not open entirely for a long period of time, which is more than an hour, because it's gonna shock off your plants and potentially ruin the whole setup. And keep this in mind, a terrarium with condensation does not always guarantee that the moss is properly moist. So sometimes if you see the moss stop growing, you have to check on the moss by touching it to see if it's dry. Then you have to water it. But again, underwater is always better than overwater. Now, terrarium can be closed forever if it has the proper humidity inside. But here's the tips that I find to have the plants more happily living in there is regularly open the lid for like 5 minutes once every 2 or 3 days to help the air inside more stabilized. Or you can puncture some small hole on top of the lid so you don't have to bother open it ever again unless it needs some maintenance. So the ideal temperatures for a terrarium is going to be between 20 to 25 Celsius, which is 68 to 77 Fahrenheit. And if the temperatures exceed 35 Celsius, which is 95 Fahrenheit, the moss will be die out. Since there's so little to none airflow inside the ecosystem, the heat's going to build up rapidly. So if you are living in a hot area and you don't have access to the AC that can running 24/7, I recommend to slightly open the lid, but keep in mind that by doing this, you're going to lose some of the humidity inside the terrarium. So make sure you check on the humid level more frequently. So here is the most important thing about light that you have to keep in mind. Do not ever put terrarium in direct sunlight because direct sunlight or sunlight, they have UV rays, which mean heat source. So it's gonna cook your terrarium as mentioned and you cannot save it. But in case you have to travel somewhere and you cannot take care of the light, indirect sunlight can be used as alternative. Again, indirect sunlight. So for most of the plants and moss, it's recommended to provide 8 hours of light a day. And here's the stuff that you need to be considered when you're picking a new light for your terrarium. The light should not have any UV rays, and the brightness should be adjustable. As for the moss in nature, they only grow under the tree or on the rainforest floor, where they only receive a gentle light. So that is the ideal brightness for your terrarium. And if your terrarium has a lid that significantly reduces light, such as a cork lid, consider using a more transparent alternative material like plastic food wrap or glass. This allows the plant to receive more light and it just looks better when on display. So that is basically all you need to know about how to take care of your terrarium, and hopefully it can get passed down to generation because it lives so long. So if you see these videos helpful, please consider subscribe and like to help the grow the channel. Thank you.